Hello everybody, Thomas Fleming here. I was splashing some water on my face trying to wake up this morning. I was forced to sleep in a little bit because the rain was still coming down, but it's just now pretty much quit now. I'm looking up and somewhere up there's blue sky. It's hard to see that direction, but see over there, there's some blue. Still got the clouds north of us because that's where the storm went. If it's going to rain, I guess the nighttime is the best time. It doesn't mess up my day to get out. But everything's wet, so I'm heading to my normal bench chair that's over here that's metal on the swing, so that way I can not get wet when I sit down. It dries out almost immediately. Okay, we're going to talk about why we got to get out of here. We are in the way of the plan carrying out. The major earthquakes over there have killed thousands. And they're not very, an earthquake like that is not very discriminatory. How can you save 1 out of 20 or something like that? God can do it. But everybody is impacted anyway, even if they survive. They're pulling out babies and small children. A woman died but gave birth, and they took the baby out. Lives have been impacted. And while we're down here, and all this stuff starts happening, lives are going to be impacted. But we're going to look at a couple of stories and an important verse as to why we've got to get out of here soon. The area that was impacted in Turkey is on the eastern side, in the border of Syria. Syria being so vehement against anybody that's good, won't let rescuers from Israel come in there and help. They'd rather let their people die than deal with God, our God, not their God. So that's what they're doing. People are dying because they're not coming in there to help. That's the devil and his people. You wonder why people are going to go to hell? Because they are so vehement, hateful against our God. And they've had this hate. It's given to them at birth because they start teaching them their ways, which are wrong, teaching them to hate. That's why you can have a 13-year-old come in with a gun and shoot people. It's just pure, unadulterated hate. And they will get their punishment. And anybody who's still there with them are going to get punished too. That's why I think a lot of the people that were harmed in these earthquakes, they may or may not be Muslim. They may not have been fully into it. But if you live in these places and choose to stay there, then there's going to be a problem. We're going to look at Abraham and his covenant with God, and then we're going to look at his nephew Lot, who lived in Sodom. How can somebody who's supposed to be good live in a bad place? They didn't seem to be complaining about living there. They were rescued only because of their connection to Abraham. The wife turned back, turned into a pillar of salt. She didn't just stop and turn around. I'd have been looking over my heels too if I was running away from something big. She turned back longingly, wanting to go back. In her mind, she was thinking about how she could go back. That's what happened to her. It's not the physical act of turning around. I'm sure everybody turned around a little bit. It's supposed to be something major happen. I'd want to watch it, but I wanted to be safe. So how did he do that? How did God do it? I don't know. It's obviously that whole area is prone to seismic anomalies. There might have been a volcano erupt someplace. We don't know. Fire and brimstone coming down, that sounds like straight from the bowels of the earth. We'll get to our study at the end here, but basically, as we're seeing these things happen and increase, these birth pangs that are increasing, there hasn't been an earthquake swarm that big, and according to our Dutchman, there's getting ready to have something else happen in the area. He can predict earthquakes. He's not 100%. He gives us a likelihood. But most of the time, he's pretty accurate. And then the government quickly jumps on him and says, we can't predict earthquakes. And yet we're watching him do it. Our government doesn't know how to tell the truth. Of course, their master that they're serving wants them to lie. And they're quick and easy to do that. But this is why we have to be looking up constantly, because we have to be out of here very soon before all the stuff can happen. Where else in the world do we have places that could use, when I say that, could use a major earthquake? They're places that we've talked about for a long time. I think about California. And there's San Andreas Fault that goes right up the center of the state, goes right in the middle of the San Francisco Bay. We've talked about it before. I don't wish anybody to go through what Turkey's going through, but we know that there's going to be more. We're told in the future the greatest earthquake that's ever hit Earth is going to come. It's in the future. Now, I don't know how big that is, but we still got, areas that are overdue. The San Andreas in certain spots has been locked for a long time, but the plate's still moving, and these areas that are locked are going to give way. I can't predict like our Dutchman can, and I don't seem to have a lot of prophetic understanding. I just logically look at things and think that we've got one coming in California soon. Now, they get hundreds of quakes a day in California. Hundreds, every day. If they don't have any for some reason, that's the exception. But they're microquakes. They're from 0 to 1. Maybe a 2 and a 3 scattered around, but nothing that does damage. It's enough to alert you that they're there. When they get a big quake there, it's going to be just like Turkey. Now, California has building codes that are probably the strictest in the world other than Japan. Their high-rises are designed to float. They've got little rubber grommets on them. They might be 4 foot in diameter, but they're rubber grommets that these buildings sit on so that they can kind of go back and forth. I've been in a couple of earthquakes out there when I lived there that were fairly good size. My sister, my older sister, who's gone now, she was living in the valley when they had the Silmar quake. And she said she was trying to run down the hallway to get to the kids' bedrooms that were down the hall, and the earthquake was just throwing her up against the walls on both sides. And then she fell down. She couldn't get down the hallway until it stopped. Now, hers was a single-story home, and there were cracks. I've been there and seen cracks in walls and stuff where the plaster cracks. Wood frame homes are designed to move around a little bit, and that's okay. And I've been in one. I was driving to work one morning. I don't remember what size it was. It was 4 or 5, something, nothing super big, but it was big enough that you could feel it. And I'm driving to work, and I'm in a little Toyota pickup, and they got a 4-cylinder engine, so they're kind of rough anyway. And as I'm driving to work, I pull up to a stoplight, and I notice the engine's running a little rough because the car is starting to buffeted a little bit. Then I look up and the lights are swinging back and forth. They don't put their street lights on solid poles a lot. They put them hanging so they can handle that. And it's doing that. I get to work, they go, we've had an earthquake. We can't let anybody get in the building until after we've inspected the building. Well, you could have looked at the outside of the building and known that it was okay, because this was a very modern building. It had glass on the entire outside, and it was a 5-story building, tiered. Each level had a patio that you could go out on, come out the glass into the patio. The building was so modern, it was the hospital in the movie 2010. So anyhow, we couldn't go in for a couple hours. We finally got in, and everything was fine. Nothing fell over. It was just one of those that they had to follow procedures. But I've been in them, and they're alerting and alarming. They alert you that there's a problem. They're alarming because you don't know what it's going to do and how much. You know, when I came out east to Georgia here, we have tornadoes, but you can see them coming. Florida has hurricanes, and the Gulf has hurricanes. You can see them coming. Now, they can do a lot of damage, but you should never be surprised. An earthquake, you have no warning. You can't, you might be able to look out a minute or two before and see the birds take off into the air and flying crazy. Some of the animals might start running. You can see a little bit of that. I think they can pick up some of the early microquakes that lead up to it. But other than that, that's all you get. Maybe a second if you're observing. And most of the time I'm not, so I'm glad to be out of California for that. But they're due. They're overdue. Many of these areas that have a lot of faults in them, they have a regular quake, every 100 years. Well, I think we're up to 500 now that there hasn't been quakes on these faults. And the plate in California, the Pacific plate, is pushing into the coast of California, and then it's going under. Subduction is called. It goes under, and then it pushes up the mountains. That's why we have the Sierra Nevadas. They're being pushed up from underneath, where the plate's getting underneath and pushing up. So the idea that, California is going to fall off into the ocean, it's going the opposite direction. It won't fall off in the ocean. Now, it may end up, eventually Los Angeles will be up in Seattle area, but that'll be millions of years. We won't have to worry about it. I think the earth will be destroyed before that happens. And I've lived in Nevada. I lived in Reno, Nevada for a little while. I went to high school there. And then I went in the Navy and left. But we've had earthquakes there too. I think maybe a 5 or 6 or something like that. Nothing big like we just had in Turkey and like is still coming in California. But whatever happens in California, if it's the big one, it will impact Vegas and Reno because they're on the border. I don't know what it will do to Tahoe. Tahoe is a very large, deep lake. It's a beautiful lake, Tahoe is. Half of it's in Nevada and half of it's in California. It used to be 100% in Nevada, and even years ago, California had political ambitions, and they got in and bribed the right people. I'm trying to adjust I'm holding it in my hand. I didn't bring my selfie stick, and so I'm trying to adjust. I've got a little dot I'm trying to put on my nose that's in the middle of my picture frame. And that's why I keep switching hands, because I'm having to hold it out. So anyhow, we've got some big stuff coming, and we're going to look at why we have to be out of here. So we can go do our Bible study. How much time have I got? I've been getting a little bit short on my videos because I'm trying to make sure I can get these uploaded. My internet here is borderline okay. I can do text, I can do, your comments on the YouTube channel. I just can't post videos. I can watch videos without a whole lot of stoppage, Sometimes I get a stoppage, but most of the time it goes. But I can't upload. If I do, it takes a day and a half to 2 to upload. So this next week I'm going to be moving, so I may try to get 2 or 3 ahead. It just means that as we get further along here, I'm afraid that I'm going to get behind the times and I'm going to miss something important. I may have to shove everything forward and insert another video, because there's going to be things that are going to happen that are going to be topical that I need to talk about. Or I could just do a separate little short video on that. I've been talking about Turkey for a while because it's a big event. I talked to somebody yesterday who doesn't have TV. And I said, well, at least we're not dealing with the problem that they have over in Turkey. And this person said, what's going on over there? Didn't you hear about the earthquake? No. A lot of people are going to be like that. They're not going to know what's going on. So be ready. You may have to explain some of this stuff. And one of the things I did want to kind of throw out here, I'd mentioned it in a comment. It's not a direct link, but it's close. The 7 churches in Revelation are in western Turkey. Now, these earthquakes are in eastern Turkey because they're on the Syrian border. But they're not that far apart. Someone said maybe 500 miles. And there's a possibility that if the earthquakes start spreading out, they're going to head in the direction of these churches. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Not every one of those churches was bad. Most of them had a C- passing grade. One of them had an A. One of them had an F. One of them had a D-, so if you want to grade them. So would he take them all out? Well, that's kind of what our subject's going to be about, so I guess let me go back and get my Bible open, and we're going to be reading out of Genesis for a little bit, and then we'll move back into the New Testament. Earthquakes in diverse places. Earthquakes growing in size and potential. I think every number is 100 times bigger. So a 5 is 100 times bigger than a 4. So that was a 7.8. It was almost an 8. And that's not going to be the biggest earthquake. And those hit in populated areas, which is the problem. We get those a lot around the world in the 7, 7.5s. Every year we get that. But they're usually in the middle of the ocean or in some uninhabited part of the country somewhere. That one hit in a populated area. The death toll, I think, as I'm heard this morning, and this is going to come out a few days after they've announced it, but it hit 20,000, and there's areas that they haven't even gotten to yet. I think, in the earthquake in Japan was about 20,000 died. So this is going to be the biggest one in 100 or 200 years. I don't remember when the last big one was, but the Japan one was the last big one. You remember the tsunami they had. Yeah. This one had a small tsunami, but not a big one. All right, let's go do some Bible studies. Okay, let's try to get into our study here. I was going to go over to my swing. I'm looking at it, but the swing's dry, but there's a puddle of water underneath it because it just rained, so. I'm back over here underneath the little pavilion area that they have here. So, if we're doing what we're supposed to do, we're in the way of things going forward. We're preventing Satan from doing what he wants to do. We're in the middle of the birth pains, maybe towards the end. Not sure exactly how long these things are supposed to last. But, we read the Bible, and it may take us 5 minutes to read something, and we try to associate it with how long it took. We don't know. Things take a long time. Even though the story might take 5 minutes, it might be 2 years. We know that when the wise man came and talked to Herod and says, "Where is Jesus, the king of the Jews?" and they send him on his way after they find out themselves because they didn't know. They don't go back to Herod and tell him because they knew what he would do. So Herod kills all the babies 2 years and under. Why 2 years? Because that's how long it was before they realized that they hadn't come back and fulfilled their promise to tell him where he's at. So 2 years went by, and that story didn't take that long to tell. So what's the time frame of a lot of this stuff? We don't know. How long are these birth pains? Did they start, 20 years ago? Did they start back with World War I and II? There was no country of Israel until after World War II. And that took 2,000 years to get to, from the time that Jesus left. So what kind of time frame? We're caught with people coming out and saying the earth is 6,000 years old. All these things had to happen. The flood and everything else all had to happen within 6,000 years. I personally don't believe that. But for those that do, God can do everything. He could make the entire Bible up until today happen in 5 minutes if he wanted to. It's God. He can do whatever he wants. But he follows his own rules. He follows his own laws. If he set up the laws of this universe, why would he set them up if he was going to break them as soon as he got everything set up? He didn't. I think the earth is, as the scientists calculate, billions of years old. But to God, time is not an issue with God. When he created everything from beginning to end. That's the important part to remember. So he has the whole timeline figured out. So whether you believe in everything happening in a real short time or everything happening in a long time, God uses his own design to carry out his wishes. Okay, well, I'm going to look at, let's go to 2 Thessalonians, and I'm going to read 2:1-6. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1. Now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, we ask him not to be soon shaken in mind or trouble, either by spirit or by word or by letter, as if from us, as though the day of Christ had come. Remember, Paul's writing the second letter because somebody wrote them a bad lie, fake letter, that said that they already missed the rapture. Paul was looking for the rapture. There's no doubt that the rapture was pre-trib if Paul was looking for it. Okay. He goes on to say in verse 3, let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first. Christ is not coming back until the falling away, which is the apostasy, which we're seeing. We're well below 50% Christians in our country, and we used to be like 80%. Now maybe the 80 was high because people lied about it, but I think we really were a far more spiritual country. But we're drifting. All the world's drifting further away. The falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God and that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple, showing himself to be God. And we know that that point in time is midway through the tribulation, and I don't like using that, and you know that, but the world has misinterpreted Revelation for years. It didn't matter because there was no Israel. There was no Jerusalem. But now there's both. So we're going to get a temple. They're ready right now. They're pushing. They're shoving their fist right down the throats of those that don't want them there, silencing them and doing what they want to do. They haven't gone in yet to take over the Temple Mount. But I guarantee you, if there's a major attack on them, they're going to go after everybody who's preventing them from getting to that Temple Mount. They're praying on the Temple Mount for the first time in 1,000 years. They're praying up there now, and they're not supposed to, according to the rules that the Arabs, that the Muslims set up. They claim the Temple Mount is theirs because Muhammad ascended from there. That's a lie. Muhammad was in the 6th century. The Jews were there with Jesus in the 1st century. They were there first. Okay. I won't get into that too much, but we can see that it's a lie. But that's Satan. So you know who, the people that are in charge of the Temple Mount now, you know who they're working for. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so that's that part. You know, let me continue on. And then the lawless one will be revealed, from whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. Eventually, God will destroy the Antichrist. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all of his powers and signs and lying wonders, and with all unrighteousness and deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth. Okay, I skipped over the verse I wanted to read. Talking about him showing himself in the temple. Do you not remember when I was with you, I told you these things? And now you know what is restraining, that he may be revealed in his own time. We're restraining. The Spirit of God is restraining him from revealing himself. Okay, now let's turn to Luke chapter 17, verse 26. As it is in the days of Noah, so, this is Jesus speaking, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark and the flood, and it came and destroyed them all. Likewise it's so in the days of Lot. They ate and drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So, that's what we're looking for. We're waiting for him to be revealed. So now I'm going to turn back to Genesis chapter 17. I don't know why I'm looking for it. I've got it marked. We're just going to kind of come up to speed on what's going on here. I'm going to read in 17. I'm going to start at the beginning. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will make my covenant between me and you and multiply you exceedingly. Then Abram fell on his face, and God talked to him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham. I'm hearing noise. Where do I hear it? There's some people out hiking somewhere. I am in a state park. Okay, so that's where the covenant comes from. The Abram covenant. So now let's turn over to 18:16. Well, I guess I've got the whole, Abraham 16, I've got that whole, Abraham 18, verse 16. Okay, there we go. And I got this whole section marked, so I'll just go ahead and read it. Then he rose from there and looked towards Sodom. Then the men rose from there and looked towards Sodom. The men that were there were telling Abraham and Sarah about them having a child, having Isaac, at their age. And we saw earlier that the covenant was made with him when he was 90. They're close to 100 now. So again, time goes by. And Abraham went with them to send them on their way. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? God knew what he was doing. He knows everything coming up. He knows that entire timeline, remember? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him, for I have known him in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of the Lord to do righteousness and justice, that the Lord may bring Abraham what he has spoken to him. And the Lord, because of the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grave, I will go down now and see whether or not they have done according to the outcry against it that has come to me. Then the men turned away from there and went towards Sodom. But Abraham still stood before the Lord. And Abraham came near him and said, would you destroy the righteous with the wicked? Which is what all this is about. All this destruction that's coming. Seals, trumpets, everything, bowls, that's all destruction. Is he going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? Well, we're going to see here that the answer is no, and God always does things the same way. Suppose there were 50 righteous in the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing as this, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous should be as wicked. Far be it from you, shall not be the judge of all the earth, and do right. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sake. Now this next part is really, it's humorous, but it shows if you can get a good relationship with God, you can push the parameters a little bit. And we're going to see that Abraham is going to test God a little bit, push him a little bit. God already knows what the answer is. And he already had all this planned, but Abraham doesn't know it. He hasn't revealed it to him. So Abraham's going to test God and see just how far God will go. And Abraham answered him, and indeed, now I am but dust and ashes, and have taken upon myself to speak to the Lord. He's coming humbly towards God. Suppose that there were 5 less than 50. Would you destroy the city for a lack of 5? And God says, if I find 45, I will not destroy it. It gets all the way down. He says, I will find 30. And indeed, I have taken it upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 be found. I will not destroy it for the sake of 20. Let not the Lord be angry. I will speak once more, and suppose that there be 10 found. I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. So the Lord went his way, and he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So Lot, he's going there to get Lot. So apparently there are 10 members of his family. He's obviously got a wife. We know about her and his sons. And the sons probably have daughters, and there might be kids. So there's obviously 10 in that family. Now, one of them fails, Lot's wife. But the bottom line is that God did not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah until Lot and his family were out. And as I said earlier, you can't say that Lot was a good guy because he lived there. His family lived there. His wife wanted to go back. Yet God saved him because of Abraham. So be watching as things get worse. And this earthquake is just the beginning of, well, not the beginning, but part of the birth pains. They're getting worse. Keep an eye out. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.